The ancient Greeks were often under attack from invaders, but when they weren't valiantly fighting off foreigners, they were often at war amongst themselves. In this video we'll be covering some of the most important battles in Greek history, and showing just how formidable this relatively small group of city-states actually was. These are 5 of the most significant battles of ancient Greece. Number 5. Battle of Marathon. In 490 BC, the Persian king Darius I attempted to conquer Greece. His Persian forces successfully conquered the Cycladic Islands just off the coast of the Greek mainland, and established control over the Aegean Sea as a result. With this key part of the region under Persian control, it would mean they now had no obstacles preventing them from sailing their vast fleet to the Greek coast, and disembarking the massive Persian army on Greek soil. In this decisive battle, the armies of Marathon and their allies joined forces to try to fend off the Persians, in what would be a humiliating defeat for King Darius. The key part of the battle that would turn it into a Persian rout was when the Persian forces were overwhelming the outnumbered Greek phalanx in the center, pushing them back. The Persians would pursue the now slowly retreating Greeks, overextending their own formation, and setting the stage for the battle to be decided. The Athenian wings of the Greek formation would quickly defeat the inferior Persian levies on the flanks, before turning inwards to surround the overextended Persian formations in the center. The battle was ended when the Persian center broke, and ran towards their ships in panic while being pursued by the Greeks. Some of the Persian army would even flee into local marshes, resulting in many soldiers drowning while fleeing for their lives. The battle itself was a decisive victory with few losses on behalf of the Greeks, and proved to the rest of the world that it was possible to defeat the seemingly invincible Persian Empire. Number 4. Battle of Eggos Potami. The Peloponnesian War was a power conflict between the two mighty Greek city-states, Sparta and Athens, in 405 BC. It was one of the most significant events in ancient Greek history, and would forever change the region. Shifting power from Athens to Sparta, and making Sparta the most powerful city-state at the time. The battle was a large naval confrontation where the Spartan navy of approximately 170 vessels took on its Athenian counterpart of 180 ships, and around 36,000 men. The event that would prove to be the most significant part of the battle was when the Athenian general Philocles sailed out with a small force of 30 vessels. He ordered his remaining ships to follow him once he had successfully drawn out the Spartan force, catching the Spartan navy in an ambush. Unfortunately, his plan would fail, however. The small force was obliterated by the Spartan navy so quickly that the Athenian navy would be the one caught off guard. The Spartans would catch the remainder of the fleet unprepared on the beach, managing to capture a majority of the enemy vessels, with only around 9 Athenian ships being able to escape the battle. It left the Athenian navy devastated, and cut off Athens from all imports of grain. The battle would finally mark an end to the conflict, by starving the Athenians into submission and forcing them to sue for peace. Number 3. Battle of Kyrenia. When Philip of Macedon started his push to conquer Greece, it was the Battle of Kyrenia in 338 BC that would mark the start of his campaign. He was opposed by a combined army of Athens, Thebes, and other smaller city-states. The battle was hotly contested for many hours, with many men falling on both sides, and victory seemingly being within the grasp of both armies. However, both flanks of the Macedonian army had the personal leadership of both Philip and his son Alexander. With Alexander's heart being set on showing his father his prowess, he succeeded in rupturing the Greek flank aided by his personal companions, eventually putting the right wing to flight. Meanwhile, Philip advanced against the left wing, also gaining victory on his own flank. With the Macedonian phalanx holding steady in the center, and both enemy flanks being encircled by the men of both Philip and his son, the combined Greek force would be defeated and routed. It would signal the end of the battle, and the start to a successful campaign of Greek unification by King Philip. Eventually, he would gain control of much of Greece before his death, defeating the Greek city-states, and helping to solidify Greece as a single powerful nation rather than just a series of self-governed provinces. Number 2. Battle of Thermopylae. The legend of the 300 Spartan soldiers that managed to hold off the Persian Empire before finally succumbing is one of those tales that has been told for thousands of years. The Spartans devised a brilliant battle strategy that involved trapping the Persian army inside the pass at Thermopylae. They would funnel the giant army of Xerxes the Great into the narrow pass, and hold the ground long enough for a combined Greek army to muster, defeating them soon after. It is said that the Spartans would have won the battle, if not for a secret passageway leading to their flank, and that if the narrow passageway was not discovered by the Persians, they would have only one way in and one way out. The fighting lasted 3 days, with wave upon wave of Persian levies breaking on the wall of Spartan shields. The terrain of the narrow pass would make arrows ineffective, leaving the only way to dislodge the Greeks being by melee combat, pitting the poorly trained Persian conscript troops against the professional soldiers of the Spartan phalanx. The Spartans were ultimately betrayed by a fellow Greek, who told the Persians of the secret passage leading around his former allies, causing the Greeks to be overwhelmed, and ultimately massacred by the vast numbers of the Persian army. Though the battle was a definitive loss for the Greeks, it would prime the Persians for their eventual defeat at the hands of the combined Greek army and the newly assembled Athenian navy. Number 1. Battle of Salamis. While the Spartans and Persians were fighting hard at Thermopylae, a messenger managed to send word to the Athenians that the Persians had arrived once again in Greece. After the first Persian invasion, there were those in Athens who knew they would be back, and the Athenian citizens would vote to build and fortify a strong navy in order to beat the Persians when they did eventually return. With it being only 10 years since the first invasion, Xerxes the Great would now return on his father's behalf, in an attempt to impose his revenge on the stubborn Greeks. After the Persians defeated the Spartans at Thermopylae, the Athenian navy under leadership of Themistocles was readied, and a brilliant naval battle plan was devised at the Salamis Strait. In the Allied fleet, the Athenians were on the left, and an assortment of ships belonging to other city-states was on the right. Their plan was very similar to that of the Spartans at Thermopylae, as there was only one way in and out from the Salamis Strait, with the entrance being the most narrow section of the entire area. This is where the Greeks would fight them, bunching up the Persians' vast fleet of warships, and forcing them to fight the Greek navy in roughly equal numbers. Xerxes positioned his forces for battle during the night, blocking off the exit to the straits, and readying his army to attack in the morning. Come sunrise, the Persian fleet formed into 3 ranks and approached the entrance to the strait. Soon after being met with the sight of the considerably smaller Greek navy, the sounds of their battle hymn could be heard loudly as they approached the narrow part of the strait. To Xerxes' surprise, the allied Greek ships charged the Persian fleet approaching the entrance, and sitting atop a nearby mountain, he watched the carnage unfold. As the first line of Persian ships was pushed back by the Greeks, they became stuck in the advancing second and third lines of their own ships. Falling sailors would be crushed between the ships' hulls, vessels would be capsized, and the other advancing Persians would be made sitting ducks for the charging Greek triremes. With the bloodbath becoming too much for the Persian sailors to handle, and the commanding admiral Xerxes' own brother being killed, the once giant fleet was turned into a mass rout. The combined Greek navy won the day, ultimately setting the stage for the Greeks to win the entire war, and resulting in the Persians never returning to Greece ever again. That was 5 of the most significant battles of ancient Greece. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.